learning is a critical element of life. And that does give you confidence, because knowledge gives you confidence. People are brilliant if you just let them do what they need to do. They can really deliver, they can really surprise you. If you're curious, you will automatically try and learn about something. If you learn about something, you find that you have a better knowledge of that particular item. And with that comes confidence, and being able to maybe act on it or use it positively in your life. It's something children possess so well. And I think as we grow up, we get busy in our lives and we stop being as curious.
Welcome back to the Mindful Creator Podcast, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you're loving the episodes and if you're loving the guests, then please make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Also, make sure you comment below with your favorite part of the episode or the part that impacted you the most from the conversation, because I absolutely love hearing how the conversations are making a difference for you. Your interaction and engagement is what helps me make this podcast that much bigger and better, with even more amazing guests and even more powerful conversations. None of this would be possible without you. So again, I'm hugely grateful. Thank you so much. And let's get into the show. My guest today is a very special guest. It's Rutu Buddhdev. Rutu was actually the first ever guest I had on my podcast, and I'm so grateful that she's taken the time to join back again. Rutu, for those who don't know, is the founder of Amara Properties, which is a luxury property development firm, which is based in central London, and it creates, if I do say so myself, absolutely stunning properties for people to live in. Rutu, thank you so much for joining me back on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's been such a journey. Honestly, we were just talking about this before we started, about how we recorded our first episode back in 2018, which feels like a lifetime ago. Like even COVID in between was a lifetime, and this feels like so much longer. Yeah. But it's great to have you back on. It's been amazing to see what you've been working on since then as well. But for those people that don't know who you are, why don't we start with, who was Rutu before Amara Properties, before you became a property developer? Who was that person?
Such an interesting way to put it, the before and after. But I think I was the same person. For me, property has been an amazing journey. The reason I started doing it was, probably a reason a lot of people tell you, to get freedom in life, get out of the rat race. And it was just one property. There was no concept. It was just one property that I did, and one led to the other. And from there, it's now become a full-fledged company. We're a team of about 15 of us. And we've just crossed 13 years. So we are officially teenagers. Yeah.
That is excellent. Congratulations. 13 years in business.
Yes.
That's a testament. So you were working in finance before?
I was, yes.
What was the reason that drove you to leave? I know you said freedom, but starting anything in property can be a risk.
Yes.
So what drove you to take that initial risk and leave the security of your job to get started 13 years ago?
I mean, I feel when I look back, some of it maybe was naivety, maybe just being a little bit stupid even, because I was young, I was newly married, we didn't have children, I could afford to take that risk, I had less to lose, so it was easier. And I kind of did it as well, I think, because I was looking for something more. And when I got the opportunity to start my first development, it was just really exciting. And I felt excited by it. And I wanted to spend more time on it. And I think when you feel that passion, it's normally a sign that it's something you should be doing. You have to love what you do end of the day. And I think I just kind of went down that path. And I wasn't sure where it would lead me. It could have just been one project. But, I was very fortunate, I think, to have loved the process and maybe the timing as well. I think when I started, it was just January of 2011. It was after that 2008 bubble.
Yep.
It was maybe, in hindsight, an easier time to start because it was less competitive to start. So a lot of things aligned.
Yep.
Upon reflection, I feel a lot of things aligned for me. But the key reason was I did want to get freedom and control of my life, and I felt that's what was lacking, and I didn't feel satisfied in what I was doing. And literally took the leap of faith.
What did you have to go through internally to feel confident enough to take the leap of faith to start something that has obviously evolved into something great today?
I think you need to have some sort of self-confidence and if you're starting something new, there's always is the risk element, but it's down to the basic principles. If you find an opportunity, you do your due diligence, you do your research, and you take a calculated bet. And end of the day, I think if you can understand the financial background of anything that you're doing and the numbers seem to stack up, you're taking a much lower risk in that regard. So, that's one side of it. The other side, I think it goes back to really loving what you do, passion, a bigger purpose of what you do. I felt like when I came to London and I rented my first apartment, I was just shocked by what I was getting for what I was paying. And obviously London is a very expensive, vibrant, big city, and you'd expect to pay a lot. But it was the quality of what I was getting. And when I grew up, I've lived in different parts of the world and kind of seen the spaces that I've lived in and what makes quality of life better. A lot of it is the environment that you're in. And so when we build homes now, we take a lot of these principles, into our homes. It's a modern way of living, like open plan living, making sure the families or, people have entertainment spaces, that they have quiet spaces, that they have outdoor space, that they have, luxury masters, where they go to bed at night space. So like all these different zones of how we live our lives. And end of the day, I think, a home is so critical. It's where you make all your memories.
Yep.
It's where you spend your time with your loved ones. And it's kind of where you rest and rejuvenate so you can go out in the world and do what it is that you want to do. So fundamentally, I think, the property, the home, the quality home aspect just really resonated with me. And I just kind of really enjoyed that process.
I love that. And there's something that you mentioned just at the beginning of that, which was having the confidence at some level to actually take that step. Now, for someone listening into this show right now who is thinking about doing something, whether it's in property or something else entirely related to their passion, but they're feeling a huge lack of confidence, or rather the anxiety and nerves are taking over their confidence, what would you say to that person to help bring up their confidence, or what could they do to find that confidence within themselves to take that first step?
I think you need to be sure with these things. These are not decisions that you make lightheartedly. And I think it boils down to that doing your homework phase. Take time to do your research, listen to podcasts like, you're doing, read the right books, continue to educate yourself. And I think even when you start doing something, learning is a critical element of life. And that does give you confidence, because knowledge gives you confidence. I would just do your research. I think even today, I love to read, I love to learn. I think it's a fundamental part of self-growth. And it could be within a specific subject matter, it could be within an industry, it could be biographies, historical, whatever. But end of the day, the world is so interrelated. And I think having knowledge is maybe the essence of giving you that little bit of power, a little bit of self-belief, so that you can act in the way that you want to.
I love that. What's the most recent thing you've read that's been inspirational for you?
I actually read an amazing book recently. It's to do with property, but you might have heard of the 18-year property cycle. It's been thrown around quite a lot. No. Okay, so the 18-year property cycle is a really interesting concept. It's basically saying that the property cycle, and including ties in with the economic cycle, runs on these sort of 18-year periods. And I read an amazing book by Akil Patel, which really dives into the concept of the 18-year property cycle. And the cycle has been proven to kind of been replicating historically. So there's a lot of evidence of that in the book. And more so really, where is it that we are in the cycle now?
Okay.
And it's quite interesting that we are in a critical phase where we're almost in the second half of this cycle, which is really taking us into this next phase of growth. And in this next phase of growth, we're going to see a large amount of wealth creation that's going to take place. Normally, it is underpinned by some level of technology. I think in our era, we're seeing it's AI, it's everywhere, and the productivity that AI brings. So I thought that was a fabulous book. And I think, I'm definitely going to be taking some of those lessons home.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to reading that as well. I'm going to make a note. Now, when you started, you were newly married. You didn't have kids. So the element of time and maybe an essence of freedom to take those risks was there. And as you've progressed 13 years on, you are now a mum to 2 kids as well, which is amazing. How do you balance, and for everyone listening who might be thinking about kids or has kids and wants to get onto the entrepreneurial journey, how do you balance kids plus a property development company, managing a team, being a CEO, being there for the family? Like, how does that work for you?
You know, it's amazing. When you put it that way, it sounds colossal, but really it's so simple.
I mean, in my mind, it does sound colossal because it sounds intense to look after kids. And I don't have kids at the moment, but even looking after nieces and nephews for a very short amount of time is quite intense. So it does always amaze me to see how mums function. So
honestly, having kids is the best thing I've ever done. And there's, you know, I think all of these elements of life, you find a way to make it work because they're important to you. And you prioritize them. They're part of your decision making. You know, for me, I think having the flexibility in, you know, being my own boss really helps me on my personal side, which is, you know, my family, and they're my biggest priority. So I've got my company and its growth. That's my first child. And then I've got my home life and its growth, you know, and it's all about kind of that journey happening at the same time, because you're constantly growing. Every day things are changing. I think having a supportive network is really important. And I'm very fortunate, you know, that I've got a family that helps us, and a very loving, supporting husband. And, you know, and it's all of that ties in together, I think. But yeah, you make time for what's important end of the day. And I think if you prioritize, you know, whatever it is that gives you that freedom, for me, it's my business, and whatever that gives me the essence to live that life, which is my family, you find a way for them to coexist.
I love that. I have a question for you about your kids, because I know kids are very curious, very open, and we can learn stuff from kids all day, every day. What has been the most important lesson that you've learned from your kids that's actually impacted you either in your personal life or in your business, or both?
Yeah, I mean, a child's mind is just phenomenal. And I think the way kids think, their creativity is something, it's amazing. And I think as we grow up, we put barriers in our mind and we don't think as openly and freely as children do. And I think that is maybe the secret that we can take from them that is fundamental to success. I mean, we're looking at a world now where AI is going to start bringing us a huge amount of productivity, and we're fearful of jobs being replaced. But end of the day, the one thing that can never be replaced is human creativity. And that is a fantastic problem solving, I think, formula, because any problem can be tackled if you look at it with a creative angle. So I think for my kids, I just love spending time with them and just watching how their mind works and having those conversations with them and seeing, you know, what angle they're going to take to things. Sometimes so simplistic, and sometimes just out of the world extraordinary. So.
I want to hear about one of the out of the world extraordinary ones. Go on, what's been the most out of the ordinary thing that you've witnessed?
Oh God. I think gosh, so many random conversations we have. But just recently I was having a chat with my daughter, and it was a very random chat. We were talking about it was kind of property related. So we're talking about property and housing, and she's a very creative minded person, and she loves Lego. And she was telling me, you know what, like, I find it so odd that when you make a house, you just can't change it so quickly. Like, it's not like when I build a house out of Lego, I can change it the next day and I can have a whole new layout. Why can't we make houses that that can evolve with you as you live, and you can have a whole new layout? And I was like, I never thought of it that way. But, you know, it's just such an odd concept that comes out from her mind.
It's such an interesting concept as well, right? Because who knows, if there's a way to make that a reality, then that is an entirely new level of inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're looking at modular housing now. There's houses that are built in factories. You're having robotic bricklayers. You're having 3D printed housing. I mean,
I've seen the 3D printing of the cement layers coming around, which is insane.
Yet to use one of those, but I'd love to one day. Yes, definitely. I think, look, it's all about that embracing of technology, and it comes from that one idea, right? That sparks that revolution. So, yeah.
Amazing. COVID was a big deal for a lot of people, especially when it came to businesses. Now, the industry that you're in is property. Obviously, you're specialized in luxury property development. How did COVID impact you business-wise, and how did you deal with the ramifications of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, COVID, when I reflect back on it, was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think because it was such a difficult period, I think to live through a pandemic, what we went through, the way the world stopped, I think it definitely creates that flight or fight response. And I mean, and I think it's all about how you channel that energy. And to be honest, we did some of our biggest projects. We started our biggest projects in COVID. And instead of, I think, running away from the business, I doubled down. And I saw that, you know, there was so much potential in what we were doing. So COVID for us, I think, was a fantastic milestone. We've seen a huge growth trajectory just from that period. And it's simply because of having, I think, just really doubling down on what we were doing. We love what we do. I think we're good at what we do. It's about doing more of it.
When the world went into fear because of COVID, where did you get the mental strength to double down, to accelerate the business? Where does that mental strength come from? The purpose of this podcast is to help you make your dreams a reality in every area of life. And that includes traveling and exploring some of the world's most beautiful destinations, like the Maldives. Myself and my wife took a trip to the Maldives last year, and with the huge number of islands to choose from and the cost differences between all of them, it all became a little bit overwhelming. That's where Simply Maldives, a dedicated travel agency for all the islands, stepped in, gave us the best advice, helped us plan our perfect trip, and got us a fantastic deal. That's why I'm proud and excited to say that I'm now partnered with Simply Maldives. Their expert knowledge can help you plan the perfect dream holiday. Whether you're traveling solo, traveling as a couple, traveling with your family and kids, or you have specific dietary requirements, they have something for you. So if you're interested in jetting off to the Maldives for your next dream holiday, then reach out to Simply Maldives through the link below, and I can guarantee you'll be well looked after.
Well, I think I just focused on what was important. I think it's important not to drown that out with whatever else is going around in the world. You know, with all the things you hear on the news and whatever you might see on your social media that can be so distracting. I think if you focus on the goal and try and have that very growth tunneled vision and really work towards that goal, there's no reason why you can't find that inner strength.
Who taught you to think this way or focus this way? Was it something that you've just learnt yourself through practical experience, or was this something that's been instilled into you from when you were younger?
You know, I think I was very fortunate, and I still am, you know, to have my dad as a mentor. And he's someone that I speak to very regularly, someone that really guides me. He's a self-made man himself. And I think I saw that in him growing up. I saw how he grew his business, how he focused on his business, how he did it without ever letting us feel that we were still not the number one priority in his life. Back to that balance question you asked about. And I think I was very lucky to experience that for myself. And then I'm hoping some of that rubbed off.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Going to the point of balance, I think there's a lot of people who have this idea that balance is when you stop work at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the evening, and then you switch off from one thing, and then you are focused on something else from 5 to 7. From someone that's in the trenches, that has family, kids, business, employees, the whole lot, what does balance actually look like for you?
Honestly, balance is doing what you love to do all the time, I think. So when you find the work that is so pleasurable, so exciting, which you automatically will excel in if you feel that way, it doesn't feel like work and you don't switch off. And so it's always part of your life 24/7. And so is, you know, your children and your other part of your family life, and yourself too. Don't forget yourself. You have to invest in yourself, be it your own health, your own education, learning, whatever it is that you enjoy doing as well. And I think it's making time for all those things. And there's no reason why you can't. I mean, you know, it's about not wasting time. I think time is critical. And if you do want to try and do a little bit of everything, it's key not to waste time. And I think sometimes people maybe spend time on things they shouldn't, and it maybe doesn't boil down to the key reasons of what it is they want to do in their lives. So I think, just time management is really critical point of it. And then the balance kind of comes with it.
So I want to go back to the first project you ever did. And for everyone listening who's thinking about getting into the property game or thinking about starting in business, and I obviously know your story and I'd love for you to share it again, especially for those people who don't have maybe the funding to get started. How did you get started, and why was it so important for you to be able to ask?
Yeah, I think for me, look, the backing was friends and family, because I had zero track record. I had zero experience. So yes, it's really tough to start in property. And I think you can always start maybe smaller. Development's probably not the best first step to start into. And I mean, we're lucky, I think, from a timing perspective in the way that, when I started in 2011, it was, just after the credit crunch, and it was a really difficult time to start. Whereas now, you have a lot more opportunities on the funding side. If the project is right and you've done your due diligence and the numbers all stack up, then there is scope in there to get funding. The funding always comes. I've never found funding to be a barrier to property. It's not funding that's the barrier. It's about, finding the right project, making sure that you have a very well researched plan of action, and to make sure that that project is deliverable at the end. So I think that is the critical element. The funding will always follow if the project is right.
I love that. And it actually backs up something that I heard from one of my other guests who's in property as well. And his core point of focus is just numbers.
Yes.
So that definitely resonates, because if the numbers work, then the money will be there, because people will want to take a piece of the action.
Exactly. And I think the numbers is the first step, isn't it? Once you've solved that puzzle, then you can dive down into the other more softer elements. For us, it'll be like, how is the product going to be? How is it going to work into our long-term vision? What other elements do we want to bring into this project, But step one is definitely getting the numbers right.
Now, you spoke a little bit about your dad being your mentor. Has there been anyone else in your journey that has been a significant mentor for you, that's not been family? And if there has been, how did you know that that mentor was going to be the right person to speak to?
So I haven't actually met anyone else in terms of physical person, but I think for me, I find a lot of mentorship from reading biographies. And I think that's really fundamental, because you can learn through other people's experiences, and especially people that have achieved great things. Yeah. So to learn through their experiences, what they went through, what motivated them, how they dealt with maybe really difficult moments in their lives, because let's face it, we're all going to come across difficult moments. And taking inspiration, I think, from their struggles, their triumphs. So that's critical. I mean, that's a critical element for me. I love to hear people's stories and, how they went through what they did, how they invented what they did, or how they grew what they did, or how they, came back from a really critical, difficult time. And these are all elements, I think, of the journey, and you need to pick and choose depending what you need that day sometimes. And that get the inspiration. So for me, autobiographies and other people's journeys is really critical.
I'm so glad you said that, because as we were talking before we even started recording, the reason I started the podcast right at the beginning in 2018 was a selfish reason, which was I wanted to learn. Yeah. And actually just hearing you say that again, I've just come to the awareness that actually every single person that sits opposite me, I do see as a mentor in some way or form, because I'm privileged enough to have this ability to have this conversation where I can take away key learnings from yourself and every other person I've sat across from to accelerate my own journey in a certain way. And that's my hope for everyone listening as well.
So true. I think you need to really double down on that as well. I think if you enjoy reading and you enjoy that element, for me, I think it's worked wonders. And yeah, definitely. You're right. It's nail on the head on that one.
Yeah. I think it's in Think and Grow Rich, where Napoleon Hill talks about the mastermind. Yes. And that's where he talks about having, even if you don't have access to physical people, have a imaginary board of members that would be your board of advisors. Yep. And that's your mastermind. So pick people that are inspirational to you, whether it's, it could be boxers, it could be business people, it could be sports people, it could be anyone that is an inspiration to you. They don't have to physically be there, but you can actually create a mentorship of your own in your own imagination as well.
And that's a fabulous way to do it, I think, because you can almost pick and choose and combine thoughts, and it's almost your own made-believe mentor with pieces of everyone else. So it's quite powerful.
Definitely. What has been some of the most innovative advances you've had in Amara Property that have helped you differentiate from other developers in the market?
That's a great question. I think, we are quite a young company. We are growing quickly, so we are flexible. I think everyone that joins our team has a underlying passion for creating beautiful homes. And we take that with us when we build anything. I think it's not just about the numbers. At the end of the day, it's about delivering something that's going to be a positive contribution to society. And we want to make sure that everything that we do, that we're doing our best at it. And that really boils down to quality, I think. So, we make sure that we are trying to use the highest amount of, high quality materials, use renewables, try and be sustainable, and do all the things that are important for today's world. And we've tried to harness technology as much as we can. I mean, we'll use, all sorts of softwares for project management of a build, even to look at things like snagging and an aftercare element once someone's moved into a home. So I think we'll try and embrace technology where we can. End of the day, it's about, the team really working together and everybody having autonomy in what it is that they're doing to deliver their best possible outcome. And I think, people are brilliant if you just let them do what they need to do. They can really deliver, they can really surprise you. So I think my team is my biggest support.
What's an example of something that you've implemented to help make your developments sustainable?
That's a great question. I think a lot of conversation in the industry now is about sustainability because it's part of the national policy. So we started doing things like solar panels, pretty early on, way before it was even a legal or, planning requirement, only because I fundamentally believe that, we all need to try and reduce our carbon footprint, and we all need to try and live life with a little bit more equilibrium than we have been. So now we're doing a lot of air source heat pumps as well, which is becoming very popular, and the technology has really come a long way. And an air source heat pump, in essence, replaces your traditional gas. So you are using air, which is then heating your house, and your house is built with much better fabric. So you're retaining that heat better. Therefore, the house uses less energy to run. And the industry is pretty much going in this direction now. And I think it's something that we are harnessing, and it's something we're going to keep doing a lot more of, because it's also cheaper, for example, for the owner of the house, from the bills and their outgoings. And they're not having to spend on high bills because they're reusing a lot of the energy. If you put solar panels on, you're reusing your own solar energy. If you have air source heat, units on, you're using the natural air, in essence, to heat your home. There's elements of like ventilation that you can put into a house, so you can have much better ventilation flow and heat recovery systems. And there's so much that you can do. The other side of it is all of this stuff is still new, so it is still expensive to implement, and it's going to maybe take a little bit of time, as there is more take up for the cost to come down, so that it's freely available, I think, to any price bracket for anybody to use.
I love that, because I've never even known those to be concepts that you can integrate into a home. So
definitely. I mean, you can have a passive house now, so you can have a house that just runs itself.
A passive house. Yes. Explain that a little bit more.
So a passive house, in essence, is a house that's as close as possible to be able to sustain itself. So it would empower itself. It would use its own energy. So all of the combined technologies that I've kind of mentioned, you could combine them together. And the idea being that you are as sustainable and independent as possible.
Almost like neutral on energy usage.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You spoke a little bit about your team being your greatest support. What makes you a good CEO?
I mean, I think I don't micromanage my team. And that's maybe my management style, but I like to think that it brings the best out of them. I think we have very clear targets, very clear direction that we're going, and that's my responsibility to provide that. And then to make sure that we are constantly keeping our eye on those. So as a project, if we're doing a project, for example, it'll be simple things like a budget or even a program target, and make sure that everyone is aligned and aware of what targets we're working towards, and then really letting my team do what they do best and let them get on with delivering. So I think fundamentally, it's really, my role is very strategic. I focus a lot more on growing the business now versus maybe when we last spoke, when I was maybe more of a jack of all trades. Now I've been able to bring in people I think are doing things even better than I can do them. And that's a really nice place to be in for the growth journey for Amara. And as Amara grows, I hope that, we can expand on our team. I mean, currently we kind of try and double every year. That's been a low target for us. I mean, and it's really weird to say, but just in January, I was sitting with my land manager and we kind of gave ourselves a target on how many homes we wanted to kind of start building this year.
Yep.
And we're in the end of February and we've almost hit our target. I think we've almost got that agreed. So we can already say, well, how have we already got that agreed? Did we just not think of a target properly? What did we do? But it's just something like that, And I think empowering people individually to deliver, because if they love what they do and they love, being part of this business and working in this business and it's positively impacting their life, they will always give you their 100%. So I think, that's fundamentally my little secret.
I love that. Well, now it's everyone's little secret.
It's everyone's little secret, yeah.
With property,
yes.
There's so many different investment vehicles that people can choose. Why has property been the choice for you? And what would you say to someone who's considering property as an investment vehicle? Like, why is it, in your opinion, better than maybe some other investment options out there?
I mean, look, there's lots of asset classes that someone can invest in. What I like about property is that it's a very physical, fundamental asset. It's, based on a piece of land. In England, we live in a place where land is a lot more scarce maybe than other parts of the world. And the other thing is property is one of those asset classes that we've seen time and time again that it does continue to grow and hold its value. You see that currencies tend to get deflated and there's lots of money printing going on, but property itself does tend to outperform inflation. And so it's a really good vehicle, I think, for anybody that's looking to grow their wealth over a long period of time. One, from the growth side, I think, and you can do so many different things with it. You can have, you can try and go for more of like a cash flow play on property. You can go for more like a capital growth play. There's so many different angles to it. And if done correctly, I think it can be really, really successful to grow wealth for anybody using that as a vehicle.
What's the biggest problem you see in people wanting to get into the property game early on?
Sometimes it might be hard to know where to start. And maybe working with people who've done it before, joining forces with them. There's, even if you're investing in a development, you can learn from that. There's so much you can do just to get your foot in the door and start that learning journey. So there's 1,000 ways in, I think.
And why do people invest with Amara Property? What's the reason that they've consistently been investing with you over the last 13 years?
I think it's because we deliver. So, when we make a promise to anyone, be it, even if we're taking debt finance on private investment fund, anything, I think we've done our work and done our homework to make sure that we can deliver for that particular investor. I think over time, that has given people a lot of confidence. It's given us a lot of confidence to know that we can do the job. And as the traction has grown and the track record has grown, that's just really added to it, I think. So I think being able to really do as you say is really, really important.
I love that. Now, I'm going to class you into like 3 different versions of you. There might be more, but I'm going to class you into 3 different versions, which is Rutu at home, which is family Rutu. You've got Rutu at work, which is CEO Rutu. And then you've got yourself as just an individual. Okay. With those three versions of you, what are your core philosophies to maintain a ability to grow and really nurture those versions of yourself? Like, what are the key philosophies or ways of life that you choose to live by?
That's an amazing question. And I think you're right. Those are probably my 3 key versions. So let's maybe take them one at a time.
Yep.
So I think if we take, the first one was the me at home.
Yep.
So for me, the key philosophy for that is, I think when I'm at home, when I'm with family, I want to give them my ultimate attention. And that means not being distracted when I'm at home, or if I'm spending time with the kids, I'm with the kids. I'm not then scrolling Instagram or, and when we're together, we do things together. So I think quality of time, quality over quantity sort of analysis. I think that for me is really important at home. And I love that part at home. I love being there 100% because if anything, it's my way of switching off. And it's therapeutic and it's calming and it's energizing and it's loving and it's really like my little cozy, happy space. So that I think, when you're there, be present. That's my key philosophy. On the work side, this is kind of where I can have maybe a bit more fun. And it's really, I think, about being part of a team, being able to guide my team, being able to choose a strategy and direction, and then supporting my team to make sure that whatever goals it is that we are setting, that we can, and all the ups and downs that go with that. It's a very busy environment because we are in a growth phase as a company. So there's so many ups and downs and 20 different changes in a day, and it's really fast moving and it's really energetic. And I personally thrive in that environment. I like problem solving. And there's a lot of problems that you come across when you run your own business.
I'm sure
there are challenges, right?
Yep.
And there is a lot of enjoyment, I think, in focusing on them and finding solutions from them and moving forward. So for me, I think when you're in that sort of phase, don't focus too much on a problem. Focus always on a solution. With creative thinking, you can really, I think, find, a solution to any single problem, and then spend your time on solving and doing versus sitting, thinking, being frustrated. So focusing on those. I
love that because I think creative thinking is so important. What's something that you've done to help practice creative thinking?
Yeah, and I think it's really just when I come across a problem, the first thing I do is I don't start looking at the negative. I just step back. I take time to calmly look at that problem, break the problem down, and then try and find a way around it. And I think it's a strategy. It's something I've learned and taught myself to do. And it really helped because I think the human response initially is when you have a problem, you get into a scared mode, fear, you think of negative, and that can be a downward cycle when you get into a negative thought process. So it's almost just channeling your energy in a different way. And if you're, instead of focusing on the negative, you think, okay, I know that I can solve this problem. Let's start there. Let's calmly look at it. Let's look at the different angles. And then, you don't have to rush. You can take a day. You can take some time because you've already told yourself there's a solution. Yeah. So you're starting at a calmer place, and then you can look at whatever the best outcome of that solution would be. So that's probably how I would do it.
I love that.
And then I think the third one you mentioned was
you as an individual.
Me as an individual. And I think for me as an individual, the way that or the philosophies that I kind of live by, I think is trying to be healthy. That's really important. Sometimes we all take our health for granted. So for me, being healthy is important. Exercising, trying to eat well, being positive, all of those sort of things. And then I think just really trying to have a self-growth mentality. I think we always want to better ourselves. That's a really fundamental, I think, human thing. And to do that, you almost need to always keep learning and teaching yourself and whatever it is that interests you, and always have an open mind and not to close yourself off, I think, to anything. So that's just a nice way, I think, because you never know where it's going to take you.
Very true. And I love that you mentioned health in there as well, because ultimately we can do everything to make ourselves successful or to grow. But if our health isn't there, then what's the point?
Health is a type of wealth, end of the day.
Absolutely. Okay, I love that. So, final 4 questions for you. Okay. The first one is, what do you believe is the most essential skill for someone to learn in order for them to be able to succeed in the world?
The most essential skill, I think, is to have curiosity. If you're curious, you will automatically try and learn about something. If you learn about something, you find that you have a better knowledge of that particular item. And with that comes confidence and kind of, being able to maybe act on it or use it positively in your life. So it's really important to be curious. Curiosity should never stop. It's something children possess so well. And I think as we grow up, we get busy in our lives and we stop being as curious. So I think being curious is a really, really fantastic way to just keep your mind open, to keep you always learning, always growing. And maybe even as you get older, it's a great way to keep the mind active.
I love that. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
Never.
And there's no such thing as too many questions.
Never, yes.
Always keep asking.
Always.
I love that. This podcast is called the Mindful Creator Podcast. What does being mindful mean to you, and how do you practice it?
To me, I think being mindful is just having awareness. Awareness and in all of your actions, in all of your thoughts. Maybe a little bit of reflection to understand why you might think certain things the way you do and why you might do certain things the way you do, and almost being aware of yourself. Everybody has different tendencies within them, but I think once you understand yourself, you're able to maybe use that in things like decision making or in the way you may react to something. You're almost understanding yourself in terms of your own nature and how you might think and react and things. And I think it's good sometimes because it lets you look at a problem without kind of, jumping to any sort of conclusions or emotional states.
I love that. Self-awareness is definitely an essential skill.
Yeah, it's a hard one, I think. And I think it's something that you're always working on. You're never fully self-aware.
Oh, I completely agree with that. It's every time you become aware of something, you realize that there's like 100 other layers of
because we're evolving. We're always evolving. We're always changing. So as part of that, you have to constantly keep working on that awareness. As things change in your life, you change.
That is such a golden statement. Now, I've asked you this question the first time we recorded, so I already know your answer. So you're gonna have to pick. You're gonna have to say a different answer this time, okay? So, your favorite, or rather, a most impactful book or movie that has had a profound impact in your life. And I know the first time I asked you this question, you said Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I did,
and you also mentioned the 18-year property cycle today as well. So I'm going to force/nicely ask you to pick a third book that you would recommend, or a movie.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot on this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there was a really good book which I read recently, and it's a bit of a health book by Mark Hyman, and it's all about kind of healthy living and how a lot of what we consume has such a big impact on our lives. A large part of that being diet, and the other, I guess, side of it is whatever else we input into our minds. But diet is such a fundamental part of our existence that it's really important, I think, to be aware and make the right decisions with what it is that you are putting into your bodies, because there's so many implications, be it good or bad, that can have. I mean, you might have heard this saying, like, it's 80% diet, 20% exercise.
Yep.
So that's a pretty big number if it's 80%.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. So that's probably a great book I read recently.
What was the title of the book?
I'll have to check it and I'll come back to you on
That's
that one.
fine.
But Mike Harmon, yeah, it's really good. And he's done a podcast as well. So
amazing. I'll link that below as well. Final question for you. And I'm expecting this answer to be different from the first time anyway, because like you said, every time we evolve, we change. And when life happens, we change again, and we keep that journey never stops. So looking back at your past, if you could go back in time to one moment to your younger self and give yourself one piece of advice, what age would you go back to and what would you say?
I think what I would tell myself or my young self is don't react too quickly. Something I would react very quickly to something. And I think over time, I've learned that the first reaction is not necessarily the right reaction. And so stepping back sometimes and maybe doing a bit of that reflection and analyzing that problem and then coming up with the right way to react or deal with something. I think for me, that's been a really big learning curve.
Amazing. What age would you have gone back to say that piece of advice?
Oh, I don't know, maybe yesterday. And a bit before.
I love that. I'm going to have to steal that quote now. So the first reaction is not necessarily always the right action or right reaction.
Yeah.
I love that. Amazing. Rutu, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me back on the show. And it's been amazing to see your journey as well.
Thank you for having me today. It's been really fun.